I am worried. Trump signals support for new Israel attack if Iran moves towards the bomb. That's what Trump said to Netanyahu when he was at the White House very recently. Therefore, we might be on the brink of some conflict. We need to worry about this, and I will explain to you why. So basically, Trump's support for new Israel attack if Iran moves towards the bomb. Netanyahu later told him in private, however, that if Iran resumed moving towards a nuclear weapon, Israel would carry out further military action. So what do we have here? Okay, as far as you're concerned, my dear subscribers. So basically, Israel is waiting to get back into this fight. In fact, you probably heard that recently Israel, airstrike across Damascus. Israel went actually in Syria to attack the Druze, okay, to help them out. So Israel, and it was obvious that the U.S. was not aware of that. They're trying to quell it. So don't forget to subscribe to this channel to understand and figure out what's going on in a geopolitical aspect, but also for your stock market and for your portfolio. But right now, I want to talk to you about what's going on with Israel, Iran, and the U.S., because Trump is basically signaling that he will support any new Israel attack if Iran moves towards the bomb. Now, what does that mean, moves towards the bomb, right? I mean, they're not going to make it that obvious. And Israel may not wait for the U.S., and Israel may not wait for them to move towards the bomb. So we're not done with this. In fact, Israel recently attacked Syria. Why? Well, they said that they wanted to protect the Jews, but everyone knows that basically, the analysts are basically saying that Israel is exploiting Syria's weakness to get in there and create confusion. They don't want a strong ally on their border. So therefore, you've got Netanyahu out there doing his thing. Now, why is he doing that? Why is he involved? Well, again, as I told you before, don't look at the stories. You need to look at what's underneath the story. And what's underneath the story is the fact that now Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel, needs to be in charge, and he needs to stay in power. And for him to do that, he keeps fighting. Because the moment he stops fighting, then he's got all these trials that he needs to deal with. He has a lot of trials. And that's not going to be good for him. So he's motivated, obviously, to protect his people, but also to protect himself, quite frankly. What is Trump doing? And this is something that you need to understand. Trump is basically saying that I did the job, I dropped those bombs, and that's it. There's no more issue in Iran. There's 800 pounds of issues running around the country in search of someone, because we don't know where that 800 pounds of uranium, enriched uranium. So my subscribers, don't forget to subscribe, because I bring to you every day information that is pertinent to your portfolio, okay? He needs to be stopped. Trump needs to stay out. Well, yes, Trump needs to stay out. And this is exactly... thank you, Kim. This is exactly what MAGA is saying to Trump. And this is why I want to make this video, because, before the news break out, you need to position yourself, right? Because what's going to happen here? What could potentially happen, right? So, and Netanyahu wants to stay in power. So he's going to keep the fighting going, or he's going to start a new fight. I mean, he started something in Syria, and it's going on today again. Trump wants it to go away. He says, I did it. It's over. I'm sorry I went in it. MAGA people weren't happy. The same way they're not happy with the whole Epstein thing. And then today in the Wall Street Journal, there's a whole brand new article about a letter that he sent to Epstein. And when the way you should read that news is basically the MAGA people are pressuring him. When they're pressuring him, the same way they were pressuring him when he decided to do this thing in Iran not too long ago. They do not want another war, and they do not want to get involved. They want to know what's going on with Epstein. Do not underestimate the power of the MAGA movement, because if Trump loses that control, that power that you don't really see, in a person, but you see it as a movement, then it's going to be hard for him to maintain, to keep all these people together. Don't forget my Patreon channel as well. I have some interesting stock picks for you in there. So the third thing is, obviously Trump wants to prove that he was right. I mean, he said he was right, but even J.D. Vance, his prime minister, said his vice president say, well, I don't know. I mean, it would appear that you didn't destroy everything. And that's what you haven't heard from J.D. Vance, okay? But J.D. Vance obviously is eyeballing the fact that he wants to be president and he wants to stay close to the MAGA people for obvious reasons. So the MAGA people don't like it. And now Netanyahu is in Syria. So this is fraught with danger because this is just a matter of a spark needs to happen, and this whole thing is going to blow up all over again. Now, what could it be? What could be the implication? What was the implication? One, Trump is going to lose a lot of MAGA support. Okay. Two, oil prices. Three, if you have boots on the ground, which I don't think you're going to have boots on the ground in Iran, U.S., but the point is you're going to be involved, right? And unfortunately, Trump doesn't really control Israel. As you could see recently with what happened with the Druze in Syria, when Syria just went there and bombed the heck out of the government palace, and because they wanted to protect the Druze, the Secretary of State Secretary Rubio went in there and said, no, there's a misunderstanding. Whenever somebody tells you that means that what are you doing? What are you doing? Well, I need to reassess my power in Syria, and I need to stay relevant. I need to fight someone, because if I don't fight anyone, I am going to be facing a trial. So you got all this tension that's going on everywhere, and it cannot possibly just go away, right? And as far as the Iranians are concerned, that they need to get back into it to make more money, right? They made $2 trillion building the first bunch of bombs. Not that they specifically want to destroy Israel, actually want to destroy, because they would never make it, but they want to go through the motion of doing it so that they themselves and their people and their cronies make billions of dollars. It cost $2 trillion to develop these things that the U.S. destroyed. So they're going to start all over again, because there's people that want to destroy Israel. Well, that's fine. The only thing is, it's going to cost you money. Whatever, give me the money. I am and this is where my concern is going to be for the stock market. Why? Well, because at the end of the day, Trump holds everything in his two hands, meaning that he's holding the party, he's holding the MAGA, he's actually holding the interest rates, and he's even holding the Fed. Right? He's keeping all these. I believe he's even keeping inflation in check. Why? Well, because technically, with the amount of tariffs that we're seeing, we're not seeing the tariffs going down through the consumer yet. Although they're saying it's coming, right? You don't want to be Walmart. You don't want to be Costco saying, well, I got to raise the price of tomatoes because of the tariffs. He's going to come after you. I don't know if you heard, and that was I mentioned that in my live yesterday. The concern is about Trump. He seems to have some health problem with his legs or whatever. So be careful, because if he actually gets sick, then this whole thing falls apart, right? Everybody's going to be doing what they want. Everybody's not going to be scared of anything. He's keeping everyone in check. And then you're going to lose everything. So be careful of that. Now, today, obviously, there's a story about the Epstein story again, which is obviously this is a MAGA issue, right? They want to get that list. There is no list, but they want to get the documents. They want to see what's happening. And Trump, at the end of the day, fine, let's do it. I have not. There was there's a in the Wall Street Journal. There's an actual letter that he wrote to Epstein 20 years ago. It was a kind of weird letter, although he says he didn't write the letter. So maybe he didn't write it. Maybe this is a fact. But the point is, the MAGA people are extremely powerful, and they want to know. And one thing they do not want is this. They do not want us to get back in there. They do not want the U.S. to get back in a war that they may have to, because at the end of the day, when Netanyahu went to the White House, Trump, exactly, correct, Apex. Trump basically signaled support for the new Israel attack if Iran moves towards the bomb. So on one hand, you need to support Israel, but the other hand, are you sure you want to support Netanyahu? Because the guy wants to fight. He wants, and he's got good reasons to fight and good valid reasons, because the more he fights, the more the people in Israel are okay with him, and they like this idea. So this is a constant tug of war. The point is, who's on first? Which one is going to be the one that's going to trigger it first? I believe that what's going to happen, even if Iran doesn't do anything, and frankly, if you're Iran, do you want to do anything? I mean, obviously, they're being watched by Israel and the U.S. to say, are you moving anything? Are you rebuilding anything? So they're not going to do anything right now. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because Israel wants to get back in there. They need to get back in there and do something to stop it, to finish the job. And you would think that Trump controls Israel, but he doesn't. I mean, as you could see, what happened with the recent bombing with the Druze in Syria, basically Rubio said, well, there was a misunderstanding and we want to get back in there to make clear the misunderstanding. I mean, they didn't know he was going to do that. So at any moment, give it a month, give a month and a half, and something's going to happen. The thing is, what is Trump going to do? That's the question. Is he going to get back in there? Now, don't forget, these wars are very expensive to the U.S. because you need to keep providing missiles. Remember what happened recently with Ukraine, where Trump was saying, no, I don't know, I can't, I don't have. Basically, the U.S. only has enough missiles for like a week. Okay, you cannot sustain a war and help out Israel, and you cannot do it with Ukraine. And we haven't even talked, we haven't spoken about what could happen with China. And I'll do a video next week on that, in China and Taiwan. Now, are you crazy? What do you mean? Well, you need to understand one thing is China right now is making lots of stuff. Why? Because the government gave money to the businesses for them to create businesses, to make stuff. And the government is financing the purchase of these things. So basically, the way it works in China, the system is, I decide that we're going to have a real estate boom. So I'm financing the boom. Of course, because it's not driven by market forces, it never ends well. But the point right now is China is building a humongous amount of stuff, lots of cars and everything. It needs to find a home. And it was hoping that the home was going to be the U.S. But unfortunately, the U.S. said, no, 50%, I don't want it, not now, later. So if you can't sell it to the U.S., then you have to sell it to someone else at a lower price. You're going to sell it, what, to Europe? Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Come to you every day with very pertinent and very interesting topics that should help you in your portfolio, in your daily lives, but most importantly, in your portfolio, because we need to understand the risks that are out there. Specifically, we're talking about China. Okay? So what do you think is going to happen when there's no place for them to sell their wares? What are these people in factories going to do? We're going to have to make weapons. I know. And don't forget, Taiwan is extremely important because this is where all the semiconductors are being built. And, you got to keep the people busy. I know it sounds a bit weird, but, you're going to, at some point, all these goods that China is building have to find a place. There's a huge amount of deflation in China. China is not doing that great. So, I don't think it's going to happen on Monday morning. Okay, we're not there yet, but keep that in mind as a potential risk, as a potential black swan in the future. So then what do we have right now? Well, what you have right now is the next potential things to hit besides the Epstein file. I'm just joking, but is the Israel thing. The Israel thing is going to come in. He's going to come in because Netanyahu needs to get back in there. Trust me, look at it, see what happens, monitor it very closely. Now, of course, the stock market right now is doing great. Why is the stock market doing great? The stock market is doing great because first it wasn't doing so great, and now we think that, you know what, this tariff thing is not an issue anymore. It's not an issue because we don't see any inflation. And by the way, the US is collecting $300 billion this year. And over the next couple of years, couple of trillions, up to $2.5 trillion. It's working, okay? Two, Trump has everything in his hands. He controls everything, and everything is working just fine the way it is. Of course, he's borrowing on the future, borrowing in many ways. You know, when you push on the tariffs that much, tariffs are not supposed to be about that. Tariffs are supposed to be about eating, about food, about, yeah, it's not supposed to be about politics, technically. Even though he was not the first one to do that, he's pushing the envelope, as we all know, and it's working, quote unquote, right now because, frankly, the US is going to collect lots of money. And he's saying to everyone, this is great, we're making lots of money. And no other country, including Canada, is saying anything. It's okay, fine, I'll pay. They're not doing retaliatory tariffs. They're not charging back to the US. Europe was going to do it, and then she fizzled out at the last minute because she says, you know what, I don't think this is a good idea. They're basically waiting for, I believe that what they're waiting for is Trump to go away somehow, right? Just let him go away because it's not going to work. We should be busting up the monopolies the billionaires are running, and if he's concerned about the economy. Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, the people are the rich are always making more money, obviously. That's always like that. And but the issue that you're going to have is then what happens next, right? What happens to the stock market? What's going to happen to the rate, you know, on July 29th when the Fed comes back? You know, is he going to get rid of? Is he going to get rid of Powell? No, he can't. He can't get rid of Powell. It's impossible, legally speaking, unless Powell, you know, kills someone or does something or steals something, which is not going to happen. And this thing with the building is a little ridiculous. I don't think this is going to be an issue. Tomorrow I'll join my channel so that you'll be notified on Sunday. I'll do a live on Sunday on some other topic. But basically, as far as Powell is concerned, you know, it's not going to be, tariffs are being used to expand economic opportunities in other countries, but bullying them isn't the way to do it. I agree. You're pissing off the people. I mean, they have no choice. Like, take Canada, for example. Canada gets 75% of their exports to the US. So they can't just saying, you know what, never mind, I'm going to sell everything else to Europe. That's not going to happen right away. So, and you're right. Who is that? JB Bad. You're right that they're actually being coerced, and they're going to need to do something to find another way, unless they figure, well, it's just temporary. This may not be temporary. This may be a long-term thing. The US is changing completely here. And even if Trump is gone, JD comes in, he's going to have the same idea, okay? So they are finding a new find. They can't find another somewhere. Well, they could find another market, but it's going to take a while. You can't just, you know, sell steel and all these things to other countries. You're going to you got to reallocate your resources. But at the end of the day, be careful. The U.S. is 25% of GDP worldwide. You cannot avoid. You may be able to. You know, Canada maybe is able to sell all of its stuff to Europe, but 25% doesn't disappear like that. And he knows it, and he's using it. And it's working. And nobody else is doing anything about it. Why? Because he's got politicians in front of him. Like with the new Prime Minister of Canada when he came in, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to show him who's the boss, you're going to see, you're going to do it? Yeah, elect me and I'm going to do it. And now the word in Canada is, maybe the guy is not really, you know, ready to do it. Well, it's not so much that he's a wuss, it's just that he wants a job after he's done, right? So he doesn't want to piss off his own people, and he wants to say, well, I'm going to fight Trump. So what do you think is going to happen? He's going to basically do like all the other leaders. And haven't you noticed that 25% of the world gap can really change quickly? Well, it can change, but they cannot disappear. Okay, it cannot disappear, and Trump knows it. Okay, well, look at Mexico, right? Mexico is out there, you know, trying to sell those tomatoes and strawberries, and who are you going to sell it to? Russia, right? So if they lose the U.S. market, they go into a recession. Now, she also, the president of Mexico said, no, we're going to reserve our rights to do this, to do that. So Trump did something that is extremely unusual. He mixed up the political aspects with the trade aspects. And yeah, I mean, it works, but you're changing, you know, as JP Bad mentioned, you know, you're changing things around. And what's going to happen is later on, people are going to say, no, we found other ways to sell our stuff. So maybe you're not 25% GDP anymore. Maybe you're 15% GDP. That's a long-term view. I don't know if I could see that far down because, frankly, some of the European countries are saying, you know, maybe we should build in the U.S. Otherwise, this is always going to be a problem for us. Okay, and frankly, it is a fact. It is a fact that, you know, the U.S. has a huge trade deficit, right, with other countries. They also have a fiscal deficit. You call that a twin deficit. That is not a good thing to have. Okay. And the fact is that the U.S. hasn't built, industrially wise, they've outsourced everything to Mexico, to China, to all these countries. So World War II economy versus post-war war, 5 short years. Yeah, that could be. That could be. So what happened is they outsource everything to outside the U.S. and now look at it, right? The 2/3 of the pharmaceutical products are made outside of the U.S., not in the U.S. Semiconductors, all over, you know, Taiwan. Okay, I mean, Biden tried to bring it some back in because he knew we got to do something. Rare earth mineral. By the way, one of the stars that I have in my Patreon channel is doing quite well. If you go on the live that I'm going to have after this live, you're going to see the chart, and it's doing quite well. It's actually 40% actually. Why? Because it's gold and it's rare minerals at the same time. Just a little plug here for my Patreon channel, and don't forget to subscribe. So that's what's going to happen. So the U.S. lost the ability to make stuff. And China has been more than happy to do it, more than happy to make the stuff for the U.S. But now the U.S. said, no, don't make it anymore. So China he said, well, who am I going to sell it to? I need to sell the stuff. Wages so high, what we want to do, keep it there. Exactly. You know, I need to sell the stuff. Who am I going to sell it to if the U.S. is not taking? You did this thing too quick. This should have been a little longer. So China needs some kind of outlet at some point because it is a huge amount of deflation. That's going to be a problem. But the first thing to hit again, as I said, is going to be the Iran-Israel situation. As we've seen, what was it, like a couple of weeks? And then suddenly we get up in the morning, never mind Gaza, and suddenly Israel is bombing Syria. What happened? Well, I got to protect those people in, what are they called, the Jews. I'm going to protect the Jews and the Sinui Bedouin, exacerbated by a partial government intervention, when the government is picking on them, I guess. So Israel is getting in there and saying, I'm going to do something. Well, we all know that first of all, they did it on their own, right? They're keeping south, the border between Syria and Israel. They're literally, you know, inching over in Israel, and they're staying there. They're just sitting there. And then they went in, right, Damascus, and bombed these foreign, you know, these are states, these are countries where you just can't do that. And you didn't tell anyone. Hey, Ken, hey, Chris, how you guys doing? So you didn't tell anyone. So that means that Netanyahu is not under control. So don't think for 1 second that Trump tells him do this and he does that. I think, and I even believe that the original attack on Iran was a big surprise for Trump. And this is why this channel is important for you. The reason it's important is because I'm not just here to give you news. You get that all the time. But I'm here really to explain to you what's going on underneath, right? What's going on underneath? What's driving all these people to do what they do? This is risk analysis. This is looking for the. This is for you. This is you looking for the black swan. Right? What's driving Netanyahu? Well, basically, the more he fights, the more popular he gets. Okay. The moment he stops, the Gaza thing is not very popular in Israel. I will tell you. The moment it stops, they're going to say, okay, you know that trial that we stopped? We need to get it back. We need to get you back because you were on trial for corruption, and that we didn't like. Okay, so that's what driving him. So he's got to keep fighting. If he doesn't fight the Syrian, who do you think he's going to do? He's got to do something. He's going to look for something, right? And if you look hard enough, you will always find something. Trump, unfortunately, he's trying to stay away from this thing as much as possible because he said, I did what I did, right? I did it. But and Trump more, especially with the Epstein story, is trying to control what's going on with the MAGA people because they're very, very powerful. They got contacts everywhere in the market, in the media, right? He's got the ability to do that. He's got the ability. The MAGA people are very powerful. And what do you think now he's going back and saying, okay, fine, so let's bring everything out. At one point they're saying, there is no list. Let it go away. It's over. And no, there is a list. Even though I don't think there is a list. I mean, the guy was keeping a list. Well, what do you keep a list for? Well, videos or anything like that. These people are smart. They weren't doing. The point is now Trump needs to do something, and that's what's happening. He needs to get back in there, and he needs to explain what's going on to the MAGA people. And this is important. It's important for the market as well, because if Trump loses control, if he doesn't have that power, and the power meaning that what it means is that you go to a senator and you tell him, listen, the MAGA people are with me. If you don't vote the big, beautiful bill, you're not going to be reelected. That's how it's used. So they say, okay, fine. By the way, for the big, beautiful bill, none of the senators actually read the 640 pages. Right? They had somebody read it. They kind of have an idea what was in it. But it was just say, yes, let's just do it. Let's just do it. So the MAGA people are very powerful because, especially with the elections coming up, right, next year, they could control, if you don't have the MAGA people with you, then you cannot tell someone to vote in your favor because you can't tell them, well, you're going to lose your vote because I'm going to take the MAGA away. You don't have the MAGA anymore. So then you're by yourself. That's the power that he has. And that power that he has, he controls everything right now, which is the way it's supposed to work. The thing, how can a man control everything? And of course, the more he controls, the more he wants to add to it, right? He had enough between the war, the big, beautiful bill, the NATO. Now he's adding Powell. You're not going to fire Powell. That's legally, that's not possible. Now, can he be replaced? In 1951, it has been done. It was done by Truman. Truman did not like the Federal Reserve Chairman at that time, and he removed him. Of course, he made a deal, but the new guy that came in did exactly the same job. You got to be careful. You got to be very careful because if you lower rates that much, and if you give the impression that the Fed chair is not independent, that's going to be a problem. Because if you have inflation and you're in the process of lowering the rates, you're going to make inflation worse. That's what happened in the 70s with Nixon and Arthur Burns. Arthur Burns, now they're finding out that Arthur Burns was in Nixon's pocket. And he kept rates low even though there was inflation. And we know what happened in 60s, 70s, 80s. You know, you had 15% inflation. It was terrible. That's what happened in Turkey. The Erdogan did not like his chair because he wanted lower rates, and the guy didn't want to do it because he said it would not make any sense, and he fired the guy. You know how much inflation there was in Turkey? 60 to 70%. So, and what do you think the market reacted the way it did yesterday? So it's important for you, my subscribers, to understand all these things at the same time. You need to understand everything. That's what I'm here for. So don't forget to subscribe. I'm here to explain all these things. It could be the war. It could be the stock market. It could be the risk. You need to understand because at the end of the day, it will impact you. Well, look at the big, beautiful bill. Do you think it's not impacting you? Well, I mean, it's going to cost $4 trillion. Yeah. I mean, not you, but later on, you're going to have to pay for it. If you are depending on your level of income, right, it's going to impact you as well. It's a big, important bill. So don't forget to subscribe so that I know that you want me to bring this information to you, which you are not going to get from the other network. Why? Because they are emboldened to their sponsors. I'm emboldened to my subscribers, right? If you don't like what I do and you don't subscribe, you don't watch, I say, nobody cares and I'm done. But they, on the other hand, can't just say anything they want. If they're sponsored by the pharmaceutical industry or by banks or whatever, they have to be careful as to what they say. And on top of that, if you're Bloomberg, you're really not on Trump's camp, so you can't appeal to be too, condescending, and you're supposed to be impartial. But so you're not getting the news that you want. And unfortunately, on top of that, the market does not tell you how much risk is in the market. When the last time you opened the Wall Street Journal or listen to Bloomberg or any of these people, and do they tell you at any point in time how much risk is in the market, right? Can you show me what the risk number is? You never get that number. Why? Because they can't tell you, and you would understand it even if they were to tell you. And I've seen it because I'm working with these people. And I will tell you, the risk level right now is pretty high, even though the market is up. Well, the market is up in the US, that's true. But look, in euro terms, the market is actually down 5%. Meaning that if you are an international investor and you want to invest in the US, you lost money because the euro went that much stronger against the dollar. Which, by the way, which is another topic, is that Trump wants the dollar to be weak. So those investors overseas are not going to want to invest in the dollar if the dollar is weak. Fine, we don't need international investors. We just need us, the U.S. Well, okay, so you really want to be Fortress America. You want to close yourself in, right? You don't want to do business with anyone anymore. And if they don't want to do business, you want to get rid of them. You want a weak dollar. So you're closing. Be careful. Be careful, because you could end up being by yourself. Okay, so that's very dangerous. And you don't want to be by yourself in the middle of a war. We're not there yet. I don't believe we're going to get there because the U.S. is still a reserve currency, quite frankly. And as a reserve currency, you have a lot of things that you can do. But back to our topic. What is going to happen next with Iran and Iraq and Israel and the U.S.? Well, what's going to happen is, I don't know, 2-3 weeks, Israel is going to get back in there. They're going to see, I saw somebody move, I saw some truck, I saw some construction starting again, I'm bombing it, and I'm not asking anyone because I haven't asked anyone, and I want to start this thing again. Trump is going to get in there, or Rubio, like he said yesterday, there's a misunderstanding. Israel just bombed Iran. That doesn't make too much sense. I think we're going to go back into it. He's going to tell them to stop. I say, I can't stop. Because if I stop, I'm going to jail. So I got to keep fighting. I got to keep fighting. I got to keep doing. And frankly, we need to find where the 800 pounds of uranium, enriched uranium, there's enough material in there to make 9 to 10 nuclear bombs with the right people. I mean, it supposedly has been destroyed, although there was some truck movements just before the bombing. So you will never know what happened until you go there. Now, my understanding is that the Europeans are trying to get in there, but they're being delayed because they also wanted to get in there. Say, fine, we're not going to bomb you. We're not the U.S., we're not Israel, but can we please go in and check to make sure? And otherwise, we're going to have to trade you again. We're going to have to, give you sanctions. And they have until October to decide. That's a long time. Okay. So at some point, someone needs to get into Iran to figure out exactly what's going on. Is Netanyahu going to wait until October to decide? No way. No way. He needs to get back in there because, frankly, if you want to make a case for it, there's a case. Israel has concluded that some of Tehran's stockpile of near-bomb grade enriched uranium survived last month's attacks. They know it's out there, okay? with considerable effort, Iran could recover some of the fissile material from that site. That's what an Israel official said. So they know that it's out there. They know that it's running around. Just get back in there, do some carpet bombing, get back into Iran, start a mess, right? Now, the thing is, what is Trump going to do at that time? That's the question. If he gets back in there, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel, if he gets back in there, he's going to lose the MAGA people. I don't care what the reason is. It could be someone attack Israel, they're bombing Israel. We cannot afford, the U.S. and Trump specifically cannot afford that. Right now, what he needs to be focused, he needs to be focused on making sure that he keeps collecting that money on the tariffs. Because if he loses his power, then if you're Costco or Walmart or whatever, you may say, listen, I mean, he doesn't have that much power anymore, so we're going to pass a cost. So then everything collapses. And then the other countries are going to say, you know what, we're going to retaliate against the U.S. And then you got a big problem. So that's the risk, believe it or not, that we have right now. The risk is the ability for Trump to keep it all together, which frankly, you have to tell. You may like the guy, you may not like him, but he's keeping it together. Now, at the expense potentially of some future problems, potentially, because, you know, the way he's pushing and tugging and forcing with the tariffs, you're not supposed to do that. Right? You're not supposed to throw your weight around that way. That is because then other people could do it too at some point, or people may not like it, or people are going to be upset. I mean, Canada, for example, the level of traveling from Canada to the U.S. has dropped by 80%. So it does have an impact. It does have an impact, and it does upset people at their core. Even though they say, well, we like the American people, but we don't like Trump. Meanwhile, you're still not traveling anymore. Okay, you don't want to come over to the U.S. What if they all do that? I mean, China, you know, they say, wow, this guy is really serious, but I need to sell my stuff. China is making a tremendous amount of stuff. And why are they making this stuff, right? Well, because the government decided that we are going to finance over and over. We're going to finance expenses. We're going to finance factories. We're going to finance the purchase of the stuff that we created so that you could, right? So if China cannot sell all the things that they have, where do you think they're going to sell it? Where do you think it's going to go? So join, and this is the reason why I want you to join this channel. I mean, that topic may not be of interest to you because you may not realize the potential for it, but there are lots of topics that we need to discuss every day and need to be updated. Why? Because it changes all the time. And it has a potential impact on the stock market and the economy, not just in the US, but globally. I mean, if we have something going on at some point, if China decides to say, you know what, the US is busy, is weak, it's got lots of things going, now is the time to get into Taiwan. Why? Because I need to build weapons. I need to build something. I need to build something because nobody wants to buy our stuff anymore. Do you think that Europe is happy that there is deflation in China? So all the stuff is going that we can't sell to the US is going to Europe. They hate it, right? It brings prices down. They don't want that. So what else could you do when you have nothing to build and you have huge factories? Weapons. And they can do it because they have rare minerals. Not only they have rare minerals, you know, but they also know how to process it because they've been processing for a long time and they've been doing it. The US have been busy, you know, doing other things, just printing money and sending the money over and can't do it. And that's why this rare mineral thing was a big deal for the US. It was a big deal for the US dealing with China. I say, no. What we want the rare minerals. And China say, well, I don't know, if I give it to you and you're going to make a weapon, you're going to throw on my head. I don't think so. Well, in that case, I'm not buying your stuff. Who are you going to sell? Who are you going to sell to? True, I need to sell. Otherwise, I'm having a huge amount of deflation. So it's a tug and war between the two of them, right? It's a two between China and the US. Right now, it's trade related. Then you've got Iran and Israel. That's cooking. And then you also have Russia and Ukraine, and unfortunately, be careful. Be careful with Russia, because now it's Russia versus Europe, definitely versus Europe. I mean, they made it clear. In fact, I think he's going to be testing nuclear weapons. That's what I heard. He still say he likes the U.S., but Trump said, I'm disappointed, and they're on the 50-day, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel, by the way. 50-day, they have a 50-day, otherwise 100% tariffs. So we're putting this pressure everywhere here. So I don't care where you're in the world right now. You have to be careful. You have to be careful, because this cannot end well, or it definitely doesn't disappear. Where's it going to go, right? And you say, well, where did that come from? Well, it builds up. It's like a heart attack. It builds up a little bit at a time, until you have the heart attack. And you say, well, where did that come from? Well, you kind of ate a little bit anything, and what do you think happens after a while? So everyone is kind of building up their weapons. And well, I got more weapons than anybody else, so nobody's going to mess around with me. Well, it doesn't work that way, right? World War II, World War I was going to happen. World War II definitely was going to happen. I mean, they went after Germany in a way that forced them to do something. So all these things culminate at some point. And this is what this channel is about, and my Patreon channel as well, is to say, okay, what's going on, and who's driving all these people? What's driving Trump? What's driving Netanyahu? What is driving China? Not the news. You got plenty of news. They could give you news out the kazoo. You don't need the news that we know. What you need to know, and they're not telling you, is, and they can't tell you, frankly, because of who they emboldened to. You need to know what's driving all these people, and figure out what's happening. And then once you know what's driving the people, what you need to know is, but what's the latest? What have they done lately? How's the market doing? Well, the market in the U.S. is doing great. True, and it's going to keep doing great, because ultimately what the market in the U.S. is looking at is the lower rates. We're going to have lower rates anyway. If you don't get it from today, you're going to eventually. In fact, today in the U.S., to tell you, one of the Fed president, right, in the U.S., one of the 14, basically said, I think we should have lower rates. And in fact, I would even take Powell's job, by the way. I mean, this is so overtly obvious that they're literally catering to Trump. Okay. Now, of course, as far as Israel is concerned, they don't care about any of that. Israel wants to get back into this fight. When will they do it? They will do it probably once, especially now that they're seeing that Trump is being a little bit weak. What I mean by weak is that this story with Epstein, believe it or not, is not going away. And that's a problem for Trump. That's a problem because he's losing control of the MAGA people. And the MAGA people is extremely important, because they are the one that he uses to pressure people to vote for whatever it is that he wants to get done. If they feel that the MAGA people say, you know what, we're better off with J.D. Vance, at least he's stuck with us. At least he said, when that report came out, that there was actually a problem with the fact that those bombs didn't destroy everything, and this report came out, J.D. Vance came out and said, well, yeah, I mean, maybe we delayed it, but we didn't destroy it completely, maybe a couple of weeks. And even the National Security Advisor came out, and she said it, and they're both gone. Trump doesn't want to talk to them. Well, because, they're young, and they know that they need the MAGA people, Make America Great Again, which is amazingly enough that Trump created created it, and he's losing control of it slowly. So they want to stay on top of that. They don't want to lose that. It's very important for them to understand what it is that they're doing with the MAGA people. Why? Because otherwise what's going to happen is you will lose the power that you